Hi everyone, I'm Sign of Life, and join me as we deep dive into Fallout lore today. And we're going to talk about the cons. Background: abandoning the new California. Despite destruction of the new cons at the hands of the Chosen One tribe history did not end with Darian's death. Though his mercenary war band was the governing band, it was not the only one over the great few decades. The fragmented cons gradually consolidated back into a single group. No longer small raiding bands this time. The newly renamed Great Khans became a unified tribe, once more under the leadership of Papa Khan, who led an exodus into the Mojave wasteland, abandoning New California in 2067. Upon the arrival in Nevada, a vanguard of the followers of the apocalypse, already present in the Mojave, reached out to the cons and taught them basic science skills, such as chemistry, reading, and writing. They hoped that the cons would use this knowledge to manufacture medicine to sustain themselves. But instead, the tribe turned the knowledge into a profitable racket in drug running. Drugs were nothing new for the cons, as they already knew how to use plants, herbs to create mind altering substance. The followers just made them more efficient and indirectly contributed to the popularity of the substance abuse among the cons. Still, some of the chems they produce go towards trading with others, namely the fiends and the west side addicts, for supplies that the tribes need. With their martial prowess, governing skills, and the know how provided by the followers, the Great Khans were the single most organized tribe in the wasteland. Effectively, its rulers, however, their homogeneity would not last long. When Robert House detected NCR scouts at the dam in 2274, he moved to claim New Vegas in the tribal conflicts and establish his rule. He offered the tribes their own casinos to operate under his address. He gave the tribes that declared loyalty to him the Mojave Boot Raiders, an unidentified cannibal tribe, and the Slither kin weapons, ammunition, medicine, and other necessities, thus creating the three families. The families, the Ermerats in particular, warred with the cons, outnumbered and outgunned. The cons were ultimately defeated, first driven back into northern Vegas, then out of Vegas entirely, forcing them to settle at Bitter Springs. As they clashed with the Republic, when the New California Republic arrived in the Mojave, the cons continued the tradition of raiding their caverns, towns, camps, and still considering them easy picking, like in the days of the new con. Doing so for years, things changed in 2278 after the first Battle of Hoover Dam and the defeat of the Legion, and the Brotherhood and the NCR stood virtually unopposed. Great Khan raids continued on, but it was the abduction and killing of four soldiers affecting settlers with large connections in the Republic that caused the NCR to retaliate in what would become known as the Bitter Springs Massacre. The NCR mounted an assault on the Khans' home base of Bitter Springs. When the main force was spotted, the Khans evacuated their children, elderly, infirming through their own escape Red Pass. NCR 1st Recon was stationed at the end of the canyon and killed all of the fleeing innocent. Those who survived Bitter Springs were permitted by NCR military to resettle at Red Canyon Rock without interference in an effort to create a source of income. The Khan established a drug lab in the desolate gorges by 2281. Drugs manufactured in this lab formed the basis of their economy, providing much needed basic living necessities unavailable in this hospitable canyon. Where there is no food, barely any water, and nothing to note. However, their drug business was destroyed. What goodwill they had, among others, like the followers. As the drug made their way to dozens of villages west of Vegas, thanks to their knowledge of the land, making it easy to make deliveries and escape NCR interference, the NCR was unwilling to deal with the problem directly, as an assault on the Red Rock Canyon could be expensive in terms of both caps and men. Remnants of the Khan presence who remained outside the canyon waged a desperate guerrilla war against the Republic, further straining their supplies, which would lead to the Second Battle of the Hoover Dam. Easy access to narcotics has also led to many great Khans becoming addicts. Trying to cope with the trauma of Bitter Springs through alcohol and hard drugs, Red Rock Canyon, already desolate before their arrival, became little more than a drug den filled with stench of alcohol and drug fumes, where it could be said even the flies buzzing around are hopped up on one drug or another. The steady stream of narcotics turned dozens of villages out west into junkie dens, on top of the chaos caused by the Khan's best customer, the fiends. Such an existence is understandable and tolerable to many, most importantly Papa Khan himself, who longs to leave behind a strong legacy. This is why Caesar sent a fermentist, Karl, to act as an ambassador to the Khans, under the guise of seeking great warriors in exchange for promise of land, wealth, revenge against the NCR to secure their allegiance. Papa Khan hatred of the NCR led him to agree to the alliance almost instantly, declaring the Khans would march to assist Caesar when the time come. Karl has oppressed Papa Khan's advisors with promise of holding position of power within the Legion. However, in reality, the Legion does not intend to keep any of its promise made, considering the Khans merely another tribe to conquer and assimilate into their ranks. Karl himself secretly despises the Khans, considering them to be unworthy of the Legion, subpar warriors at that. And he fully expected the Khans will have to be decimated first in order to bring them to heel. The Khans remain oblivious, knowing of no alternative way to move forward. They are dying out, and every single day brings their enemies closer to launching a strike against them. The dream of becoming Caesar's elite cohorts as a vehicle towards the destruction of the NCR proves too tempting, making the Khans blind to reality of what joining the Legion really entails. Their society, their government, as the third incarnation of the Khans, great Khans are the only true truly organized band of raiders in the Mojave. Both men and women can hold their own in a fight, whether in a brawl or a shootout. As a tribe, however, the Great Khans are but a shadow of their former selves. Both their numbers and morale have been ravaged by a series of massacres and displacements until the current leader, Papa Khan, guided the tribe into an exodus into the Mojave wasteland from California. Papa Khan governs his khans in a similar fashion to his predecessor, Garl Deathhand, using advisors to inform decisions for the good of the tribe, while still making final decisions himself. His trusted advisors include Regis, the chief of law enforcement, and Papa's second in command right-hand man, Jack and Diane, in charge of economics and chemtrade, and Melissa Lewis, the lead scout. Unlike Garl, however, Papa is willing to accept criticism of his leadership and does not punish his followers for speaking out against him. Papa Khan also has a system of succession in place, differing from that the original Khans from the time being. Regis will take over Papa Khan die. Will take over should Papa Khan die. However, Papa is able to select an heir to succeed him should they impress him. This heir does not have to be related by blood to Papa Khan, nor do they even have to be a Khan at all. The leader of the Khans is able to step down at any time for any reason, but an heir cannot decline their role until they become leader. Initiation in order to become a Khan or pass from childhood to adulthood. If one is born a Khan, one must pass a series of initiations rituals, culminating in a beatdown. A number of Khans gather around the initiate and beat them for a full minute. If the initiate calls for mercy, they are disqualified, but they survive and they are permitted to become a full-fledged Khan. When this comes the option to pick a new name, the initiation rites are essential to the sense of community. They are meant to demonstrate the toughness of the Khan and may leave scars, a point of pride for everyone who makes it through them. Though many boast of the deadly nature of the initiation, it is still possible to repeat the trial as many times as initiate desires. It appears that a few actually die from the beatdown, and those too weak to pass the initiation simply move on elsewhere. However, it is frowned upon for a failed initiate to return to the Khans. Their lifestyle, the great Khans reside in the Mongolia style tents called gurs, yurts, within Red Rock Canyon. However, unlike the other settlers of the Mojave, these homes are used for little more than sleeping in, as they usually only have room for a couple of beds and central fire. A great Khan often carries all of their possessions with them if they should decide to have anything besides the bare essentials. Because of this, as well as their aggression, the other factions view them as savages. However, unlike the jackals, fiends, scorpions, vipers, the great Khans are not hostile towards newcomers. If the great Khans begin to dislike someone, however, they will often show great hostility due to a long and hostile history. However, they will open fire on anyone wearing an NCR uniform, regardless if they are in fact an NCR member or not. The Great Khans subsist mainly of hunting and farming, and profit from the sales of chemicals and drugs produced in the Red Rock Drug Lab. The canyon is inhospitable location, lacking adequate food and water, leading to the Great Khan's dependence on drugs, which they can create quite easily and can sell to a multitude of factions. Their art and culture. The Great Khans are shown to record parts of their own history as paintings on the walls of Red Rock Canyon, namely the war they had within the three families in the NCR. In these paintings, the Great Khan depict as large and intimidating as they behead and kill their enemies. Despite the struggling the Khans overpowered the three families in the NCR. Papa Khan freely admits the opposite, suggesting that these paintings should be considered as wish fulfillment rather than true history. Bitter Springs is also decorated with paintings and graffiti created by the Khans, depicting various subjects such as horses, women, and dead NCR Rangers. Additionally, it is mentioned that the Khans enjoy singing ballads about their victories and sorrows, especially whilst drinking alcohol. At the same time, the Khans do not care for poetry as written by Jerry the Punk. However, high-ranking Khans such as Regis and Papa Khan are shown to own and read books and magazines, showing that the Khans are not outrightly dismissive of all forms of literacy and perhaps dislike Jerry's creation simply because he is not yet past their initiation. Iconography, Jesus. Words are hard today, guys. The Khans are most closely identified with their use of leather vests, and to a lesser extent, their horned helmets. Their symbol is that of an intimidating face of a Mongol warrior with a long, thin mustache and horned helmet surrounded with a chain with a banner beneath spelling Great Khans. Or better yet, Khan! In the past, they used a skull over a metal shield with chains as the identifying symbol. Their military in the Great Khans have a long history of raiding and respect of fighting and strength, as such as the have dedicated warriors used in conflicts. These warriors can be identified by their horned helmets during the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. In addition to their helmets, they can be seen wearing goggles and black bandanas to cover and protect their faces. It was mainly warriors who survived the assault of Bitter Springs. As a result, after 2278, the civilian population became very small. Many Khans warriors only want to fight the NCR. Only few are willing to take up mercenary work to earn money for the group. Small group of warriors, including Jessup McMurphy, along with Chance, agreed to work as hired muscle for the leader of the Chairman Benny on a job near Good Springs. However, the Khans make a hard distinction between mercenary work and raider work. The Great Khans' preferred form of warfare is through war parties, where multiple central figures lead their own individual units into individual battles and adapt on the fly rather than being ordered by a main unit. Warriors are skilled in guerrilla warfare and will use their environment, such as canyons, cave systems, to their advantage. These include taking hostages during situations where they are outgunned, should they feel it necessary to ensure their own survival. There are also bear traps, rigged shotguns, against those who might chase them. The reason the Khans settled in Red Rock was because they intended to use height advantage and rocky cover to deter possible invasions. Around Red Rock canyons, as well as various locations where Khans have made camp, their borders are marked using one of two statues. Either a skull atop a spike with a hubcap, or a humanoid figure composed of bundles of sticks, rags, and animal skulls. These statues are placed high on the mountain and are used to inform outsiders that they are entering Khan territory and will be subject to their laws. As well as warriors, the Great Khans have drug runners in form of law enforcement. Though the Khans runners have once served the Khans as scouts performing reconnaissance due to the massacre, they have been redirected to become drug runners. Additionally, some Khan warriors have specialist skills such as Oscar Valsko, who is a skilled marksman. Khans also adhere to a code of honor determining how they fight. It is against the Khans' beliefs to kill somebody who has not previously done wrong to them. Even they get paid for it, nor should they abandon one of their own. They also believe that it is dishonorable to kill children and elderly, although it is apparent that not all Khans strictly follow these rules. The relation to the outside world, the Great Khans usually keep to themselves, rarely traveling too far from Red Rock Canyon, besides the odd raiding party or trek into fiend territory, for fear of being spotted and hunted down by NCR patrols. They frequently visit the fiends and other tribes or organizations dependent on their drugs. Despite their reputation of hostility, the Great Khans appear tolerant of outsiders, even as far as to build alliances with other factions. One such alliance would be the new alliance with Caesar's Legion, wherein Caesar's emissary, Karl, is treated as an honorary guest in Papa Khan's home, eating alongside him. The proposed alliance has the promises of the land, wealth, and revenge against the NCR in exchange for the Khans assisting Caesar at the dam when the time comes. The ambassador strives to deceive Papa Khan advisors with promise of holding a position of power within the Legion. In actuality, the Legion intentions include absorbing the tribe after they're using them to combat the NCR. Although official alliances the Khans have held was between them and the followers of the Apocalypse, who taught the Khans reading, writing, and basic chemistry and medicine. It was these skills that have allowed the Khans to survive in Red Rock Canyon, though through the manufacturing of addictive chems, much to disappointment of the followers. Through the alliance, this alliance is no longer active during the events of the games. It is possible for the Khans to rekindle their friendship should they flee to Wyoming. Coincidentally, one of the biggest buyers of chems is also the Khans' largest enemy, the New California Republic. The NCR officially has banned illegal drugs. However, the Crimson Cavern and wealthy merchants that make up the NCR frequently turn a blind eye in order to make a profit. While these merchants make up a large portion of their customer base, their biggest customer is by far the Fiends. Despite this Fiends outside Vault 3 will still attack Khans on sight. Another partnership related to this is between the Khans and the West Side, where the Khans sell Kims and also trade for goods that the tribe need to survive. For this reason, Motor Runner tries to keep fiends out of West Side to keep the Khans happy with little success. The final alliance comes as a result of the carrier actions. Alliance between the Khans and the powder gangers can be made with help from the carrier, wherein the powder gangers will join the Great Khans for protection from the NCR in exchange for providing the Great Khans explosives for their armory. Their technology also is pretty good. The Great Khans use a random assortment of weapons throughout the carrier's involvement with them. While most Great Khans boast of their great strength, very few use melee weapons as their primary weapons. Only Regis and Chance at lower levels, the Great Khans use the 10mm and 9mm submachine guns, and at higher levels they use the hunting revolver, trail carbine, and riot shotgun. They do have access to their own armory that includes reloading bench and a workbench, suggesting that the Khans are able to craft at least some of their own weapons. The Khans' primary source of revenue is drug production, as their Red Rock Drug Lab contains the equipment relating to this production. Among many, they have managed to master the production of jet. The quantities of bromine dung used leaves a nasty smell in the drug lab. However, the drug trade is not their only form of self-sufficiency. They consistently hunt geckos and bighorns for their meat and pelts, which are tanned into the leather outfits and they wear. The Great Khans also wear crude armor plating on their legs, meaning that they either have a loose grasp of basic mining or forging, or more likely, they use decorative and charred bones for the animals they hunt. And that is the Great Khans. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, check out the other lore videos. I will catch you on the next one.